awesome backlighting, but hey, welcome back. We got our 1990 Jeep Cherokee project, and we're gonna be digging into why doesn't it run. So it's got no fuel, that's why it doesn't run right now. When I bought it, I was aware of that. The owner told me the fuel pump was out, and he started messing with some stuff, but I was able to shoot some ether or carb cleaner down the throttle and fire it off and have it idle a little bit there while feeding it with starter fluid. So we know it's a fuel issue, and I'm gonna pull you around so you're looking at the actual problem, which would be the gas tank area, and then we'll go from there. We're underneath here, and I don't know how much you can see, but basically the gas tank back here, it's already been halfway, sort of removed. Previous owner had told me the fuel pump was bad, and U-joints are good, so that's nice. But I got a new fuel pump from a junkyard, so we're gonna go ahead and swap that out with one we know is good. And I'm gonna drop this tank anyways, just because it's halfway dropped, and I wanna replace the fuel filter while I'm here, and I also want to replace, well, clean out the gas tank in case it's got any gum or varnish or any old junk in there. Okay, I'm gonna try to show you as much as I can. But basically, to remove this guy, and I'm sure I'm blocking some of the light now, here's the fuel pump right in here. There's a bunch of lines, hoses, wires, stuff coming off of the tank that you're gonna wanna disconnect before you try to drop the tank. Follow all of your lines up towards the rear of the Jeep and just disconnect them. There'll be little plastic clips that poke them in there, or zip ties. The fuel filter, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the hose. I'm actually gonna remove all the hoses probably from my fuel pump right here at this connection with these little guys, and then I'll pull these off. And then there would be two, you see a ratchet strap up here, there would be two gas tank straps that wrap around the underside of the tank and then come up and grip into these little holes inside your, see that hole right there? Inside your frame or your unibody or inside the floorboards. And that's what's holding your tank up. Mine have already been removed and the tank is halfway sitting down. There is liquid in there. I don't know how much. It doesn't feel that heavy, so I'm not too concerned. I'll just drop it and I'll probably put a transmission jack underneath it for just in case. But right now I'm gonna disconnect all the soft lines. You wanna unplug your fuel pump. Here's what the connection, I disconnected it the other day to try to hotwire it to test to see if the fuel pump was dead, and it was. So disconnect that electrical line and then just get rid of the rest of these hoses. Get them out of your way so you can drop the tank without anything getting caught up or hung up on it. So I'm gonna disconnect all that and then we'll try to drop this guy. Okay, everything is disconnected on the front. There's two breather lines, I just cut them. They're dangling down, the electrical's down. That ratchet strap is holding it up over here. And then all of the stuff from the gas tank on the fill lines over there, that's what's holding all that up. So it won't come down. I already picked it up and unratcheted it. So yeah, I can't get to any of that there. There is an access panel right here that just unbolts, I think 10 millimeter stuff. So I might pull that out. Ooh, that's bolted underneath this trailer hitch. So, oh, I can get to that over here. So I might take that off and then see what I can do about that. And then I'll keep going. Folks, here's what I was trying to show you. It's these hoses have to go through that hole, otherwise they get hung up, and there are those hose clamps which attach them to those two little lines up there that you can barely see. Now the tank's off, and we're gonna pop out and replace this fuel pump while the tank's down. So I'm gonna take it out, but once I've got it out, I'm gonna look in there and I'm probably gonna clean this tank out while I have it down. But all you've gotta do is, you see these tabs? All of these fuel pumps from this era are pretty much the same, or fuel sending units. You just need to tap them out. I've sprayed it down with WD-40 or PB Blaster, and it's a locking ring right here, and there's a bunch of tabs all around it. So you're gonna stick the screwdriver here and then tap the back end until it's lefty-loosey, and then once that lock ring slides out of its little locking tabs over here, and there's another one here and some on the other side, the whole thing will be loose and you can just kind of feed it out. But that gas smelled really bad when I drained the fuel filter, so it's I can tell it's pretty corroded, which is why I decided to drop the tank. You do not need to drop the tank to replace the fuel pump. On these Cherokees, it's on the front so you can access it. A lot of times it's on the top of the gas tank, smushed in between the I don't know, body of the vehicle, which then you do have to drop it. It's a pain in the butt. Cherokees you don't. I've done them without removing them. Just this one was already half removed, so it made more sense for me to do this so I can properly clean out the tank and get all the varnish out. So let's take okay, the culprit is out. This is not the worst one I've ever seen. 73 Camaro is the worst I've ever seen, but this one's up there. And there's a surprise at the end of this clip. So take a look at the sock, the fuel strainer. Let's focus everything. I mean, you can see it's very gummed up with crap, and there's a lot of varnish. The gas smells horrible. Doesn't really smell like gasoline. Look at this rubber down here. That is completely crusty, and that's, holy cow, that's gummy. And this, I mean, this is not supposed to dimple like this. This is like rubber hose material. This is super swollen from the bad gas. This thing's all corroded and rusted up. Up at the top here is all rusted. Now, the surprise is it was stuck to the bottom of the tank when I was trying to pull it out, and part of the fuel pump is still stuck in there. You see that thing? That thing, a little bluish looking thing in that. The gasoline's not supposed to be orange like that. This stuff's real old. I think the thing sat for 10 years. So that's pretty bad, and that's stuck in there. So I'm gonna reach in there and pull it out. It basically came off the bottom over here, just the rubber disintegrated and disappeared. But it does look like the exact same fuel sending unit that I pulled from the junkyard, so feel good about that. And now look at the inside of that tank. Very crusty, all that white flaky stuff. It should just look like galvanized steel. It should just be a dull steel color. All that crusty stuff. If I was to just swap the fuel pump and not clean this tank out, it'd only be a matter of time before our fuel filter up there in the Jeep, the inline one, completely clogged up. And that's your best case scenario. If it started making it through there, this would then go into your fuel rail and then start clogging up your fuel injectors. And that's a pain in the butt and much more expensive to deal with. I've had to do that before on a boat motor that sat for 10 years. All the fuel in those fuel injectors were varnished up as well. These, honestly, they could be bad because fuel would have been sitting in there when the Jeep was stored. We'll just have to see. It ran on starting fluid, but the boat that I had this problem with would run when there's no load on the engine as well. So this thing, I'll probably get a brand new, totally cleaned out tank in here, brand new fuel pump, brand new fuel filter. Well, from the junkyard, used fuel pump and filter. And then I will go ahead and try to fire things off. I'll probably take a pressure reading at the rail. It should be, I think, 30 or 50 PSI at the rail. And I'll probably run a couple rounds of Kansas Seafoam and some fuel injector cleaner through the tank and see if that kind of picks up. If not, I may have to do the injectors. It's not that hard on a 4.0, but just be a bummer, and I'll try to avoid it. So I'll show you how I clean out this tank. It's completely free and it's super sweet. You're gonna look really cool doing it. So I'll show you guys how I do that in a bit. Okay, well, here's what you're gonna do. I'm out in the front yard, you're just grabbing a bunch of gravel. This is 1-inch clean rock. It's in my front yard. You're gonna throw a bunch of this right into the tank, fill it up with water from the hose, and then just slosh the thing around, hold it and slosh it like a washing machine. Do that a bunch of times, rinse it out, spray it out, keep emptying the water in and out. Clear out all the passages, the fill lines on this side and then this area here. And then eventually all that stuff on the inside will go ahead and it'll knock itself off and it'll be nice and sparkly-ish and clean by the time you're done. So I'll show you an after shot. You've already seen it before. I'll get to washing this thing and then I'll show you the after. Okay, there's the finished product, filler neck. It's hard to get the light in here, but in the camera. But I'd say looks a lot better. So we're gonna finish fully drying this thing out, and then we can put our fuel pump in and throw it back in. So you guys have probably seen me do this before, so I didn't film it. And I've got other videos, but I just popped in the fuel sending unit and pump assembly. Tapped it in righty-tighty, make sure the gasket was lined up before I tapped in the locking ring. Made sure that it went in the right orientation so the sock is on the bottom of the tank. I've still got this fuel filter from my junkyard one sitting over here, and I'm just gonna leave it all attached because it's in good shape. Before I install it, I wanna show you something that I ended up doing over here. Take you off the tripod real quick. This thing, it did come with the gas tank straps when I bought it. They were bent up, but what it did not come with were these guys over here that sometimes get pretty rusty. You can see I went to Home Depot and bought these little like eyelet bolts. So there was an eyelet at the top and I just cut half of it off. So I turned it into this guy and it goes right up in there and then it hangs down, and then I got 9/16 nuts and I'll do two of them. So I'll round one all the way up and then I'll get the second one over there and then I'll back them into each other so they lock in place, and that'll hold my gas tank straps once I have the gas tank in. So now what I've got to do is just the fun part, lifting this thing up into place. And I've only got myself right now, I don't have a buddy, so this is gonna be fun. But I got a ratchet strap to help hold it. You can use transmission jacks. It's not that heavy since it's empty, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna wrestle this thing in there and then plumb all the lines in. The other thing that I'm going to do is I bought a clear little 3/8 inline fuel filter, a plastic guy. The idea here is I'm gonna splice it right after the tank in front of my first fuel filter from the factory. That way I can just see. I got the tank pretty clean, but I want to make sure that I don't have any fuel issues, and that's the easiest way. I don't want to have to drop the tank or have to like take off one of these rubber lines just to be able to see. I want the clear fuel filter spliced in there, so I'll put that in there just so I can keep tabs on everything when I start running this guy. Okay, take my word for it. You can see it, the tank's back in. I buttoned up, hooked up the filler lines, hooked up all the lines down there to the fuel filter. Now, what you'll see over here is, when I got it, the fuel line was just sitting like this, disconnected. So I've been cleaning these out with brake clean, and I've got 3 new pieces. Inside of these fuel lines, what you need is a O-ring, a plastic little piece spacer, and then an O-ring. This is the outer O-ring, it's chewed up. I've got new ones inside this little thing. So I'll show you how that goes together, but I'll slide them all on and then I'll end up pinching the line back together. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure that my fuel pump's working, and I want to see what's coming out of this line. I'm almost positive that we're gonna have a ton of leaks, probably right here at the pressure regulator and on all the injectors because it was sitting for so long. But I actually have all new O-rings for the injectors too sitting on the shelf, so that's cool. But I want to make sure, I want to see what comes out of the tank basically. So I'm gonna throw 5 gallons of fresh gas in there, and then I'm gonna cycle the key and just kick on the fuel pump. I've got the fuel ballast resistor jumped here since I don't have one. So just ran a jumper wire, and it should run this, should run the fuel pump, and I want to see what kind of gas we get coming out of this line, make sure it's not too crudted up before I put my new O-ring and spacer in there and then squish it together. Then hopefully I won't have any leaks on this one, but I'll probably have to redo the rest of this stuff. So I got a new battery in there as well, so that's next step. Okay, I got a little bottle in here. We're gonna just, I got a battery. It's a cruddy battery. I may have to put a pack on it, but I'm just gonna have my buddy turn the ignition on.
Do you want to redo this?
Just, why? Yeah, just go ahead and turn it to the on position. Don't try to start the car. That's the on position?
Yeah.
To the off position? Alright, well, we're gonna have to check batteries and things. Alright, the battery, I don't know how it's possible. It had 0.1 volts. I had it on the trickle charger for the past couple days, but apparently didn't want to work. So I'm gonna throw a jumper pack on it and we'll see, ooh. We'll see if that can give it enough. What the? Oh, wow. Go ahead and turn it to the on position. Nothing, right? Yeah, you can cut it off. This thing is so dead, it's telling me the jumper pack isn't gonna do anything. Wow, that sucks. Okay, let's try a different battery. Okay, third time's the charm. This battery has 12.6. Sitting, when it's under load trying to start it, maybe not, but go ahead and cycle it to the on position. I hear the fuel pump. Go ahead and turn it off. Cycle it to on again. Nothing coming out over here. I hear the relay clicking. You went all the way to the second one, right? Oh, I don't see any leaks back here. Go ahead and cycle it on again. To the on position. Now I hear it. Definitely hear it. Probably just gotta fill up the everything, the fuel filters and everything a couple times. So, let's go ahead and do that again. Wait, stop. Oh, okay, I have the return line. The return line, not the send line. My bad. What I'm looking at right there is the return line. So the injectors started leaking before I got any fuel out of my return line that I was expecting to see fuel from. So that makes sense. You can leave it in the off position, and I mean, you can see a ton of fluid dripping, a little bit from the return line like it should, but I saw a bunch. Yeah, my gosh. Where's that coming from? Right around the rail. It looks like it's coming from the fuel pressure regulator. If I can get it to focus, which is this guy. They leak all the time. Now it could be leaking from in here, but it could be leaking from the fuel rail or this actual fuel pressure regulator. It's pretty darn common. I don't think, well, there's a mess of fuel all over the place now, so it could be leaking from the injectors as well, I don't know. But the good news is the send line does not seem to be leaking right back there. So I'll probably hook up this return line since, yeah, it's clean. And then we'll figure out where this leak is coming from before we can actually try to pop it off. Okay, party people, I got the return line in. Had to take out the pressure regulator side of the return line. Here it is. And it looks like it's the same O-ring as the fuel injectors, but it's pretty straightforward. There's the fuel injector. This is number 1 cylinder. It's right by the front of the engine, and it's held together by these 2 holes on the back side of the fuel rail. It's just these little torque screws. They're T25, I believe. Pull those two out, and then this is just an O-ring in here, a fuel injector O-ring. You can just wiggle, take your vacuum line off, then you can just wiggle out the pressure regulator. Got to disconnect the line over here. It comes out right out of here. Now this thing was, I mean, you can see that there's no resistance. This thing is leaking a ton. Of course, this little O-ring is destroyed. Now it looks like it's the exact same part as the fuel injectors, which I got them from Napa. These were for a different project, but I didn't end up using them. So where's the part number? All right, there it is. 212093. And this just comes with a pack of 2. I had to buy a bunch of packs of 2 because the pack of like 6 or 8 or 12, whatever, they didn't have them at the time. So this will get you by. I'm gonna swap out this, and then I'll repressurize the rail, put it all back together, and see what leaks next. And it's really just as simple as taking your pick tool, prying this guy off, and then shoving this new one right on in its place, and then squishing it all back together. Okay, it's not leaking from the fuel pressure regulator anymore. I can hear a hissing noise, but I can't see any leaks from any of the injectors currently, nor the send or return line, and nothing underneath. Before it was leaking a ton right out of in there, and now I hear a little bit of hissing. Now it could be this fuel pressure regulator vacuum line, but I think there's probably a tiny bit of a leak somewhere, but I don't see anything drastic, so I'll probably get a fire extinguisher and then try to turn this thing over. Didn't see any oil pressure on the gauge, and it sounded like a lot of racket up in the top end. So I shut it down. I know there's oil, but I'll probably add some to the top end and then try to fire it again. The saga continues. I want to see if I can get this on camera. This has just become pretty interesting. I always buy pieces of crap off of the internet, and I know that it's part of the game, but it's really interesting and fun for me to figure out what happened, what they did. When people sell stuff, it's not always what it appears, especially when it doesn't run and drive. When I got this thing, I fired it up on starting fluid because the fuel pump was out, and it fired up on starting fluid, and it did just fine. And in the last clip, you saw the thing was ticking incredibly bad, and there was 0 oil pressure. So now what I've done is I drained all the oil. I don't know if I mentioned this, but the oil was brand new when I went there to fire it up, and I asked the guy about it. He said he didn't change it, and then I asked him again. I said it's brand new, and he's like, I don't know, maybe we did, maybe we didn't. So it's a little sketchy in my opinion, but I just dumped it all out of the bottom, and I poured it back in the top, and I'm gonna fire it up again, and it was significantly quieter when I did that. So essentially, I acted as the oil pump, and I'm gonna see if you can catch it on camera. I'll fire it up again, but basically, I'm pretty sure the oil pump needs to be redone because it's got no oil pressure. But let's see if it'll be quiet now. So it doesn't sound great, and there's still a little bit of a whine from the front. It sounds like maybe it could be one of the bearings on one of the pulleys. Now also we're leaking the injectors. I haven't done anything with the O-rings. They're leaking like a sieve, so they're touching the exhaust and burning, but the engine is significantly quieter and sounds a lot more like a Rattly 4.0 should. So I've got a pretty strong suspicion that the guy I bought it from was draining the oil and then dumping it in the top before anybody came to visit, or at least added a quart or 2 in the top end before I came to visit and check it out, because there's 0 oil pressure on the engine. And I bought it, I fired it up on fluid, it sounded okay. I took it home, let it sit for probably 2.5–3 months. fixed the fuel pump, got it running, but it was insanely clattery up top after doing that. So I think all the oil went to the bottom and there's no lubrication on the top end. So I've already bought an oil pump and a oil pan gasket down there. Now that I know, I think it's just an oiling problem, I'm gonna go ahead and drop the pan and replace the oil pump and see if we can get some oil pressure up to the top end. But it's interesting. These kind of things are really fun to figure out. And of course, I'll never get the validation of figuring out what actually happened, because I mean, if I text this guy, he's not gonna tell me what he did or didn't do, but it'd be really cool, and it's kind of neat to figure this stuff out. So we know the engine does quiet down when you get oil to the top, and it seems to run just fine. So that's the next thing I'm gonna do, is replace the oil pump.